Good evening, baseball fans, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tonight we have a ton of baseball to get through. Opening day has happened. Well, we have our first baseball game of the season, at least, with the Dodgers and the Cubs facing off in Japan. We're going to give our thoughts on that game, the results, and how everybody did, how everybody's looking to start the season. Simultaneously, the rest of the league is still in spring training. We're going to do our spring training check-ins, see how things are trending as opening day for the other 28 teams continues to approach. We'll also be doing our division preview this week. This week, we've got the AL Central, a division where you could probably make the argument for 3 or 4 of these teams competing. One of them, probably not. We're going to take a look at who that is. I think everybody kind of already knows that one, but we're going to talk about them nonetheless and talk about how interesting this race could be down the stretch. And then, of course, we have to check in with our college baseball teams. Our college softball teams were right in the hearts of those seasons. Things really ramping up. Will anybody top the SEC in softball? We're going to take a look at a few options there and take a look at baseball teams. A lot of teams hot, some teams not. We're going to take a look at that. And then, of course, end our show with our traditional Around the Table, where we give our thoughts on whatever baseball topic we're feeling tonight. So like I said, we've got a lot of baseball to get to. We've got Alden K, we've got Ricky K, and we've got Mike Patt here for the Bullpen Bulletin on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the iSports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, jerky that is on a whole nother planet. Go to planetjerky.net to get yours today. Also, Vital Apparel, do be sure to use code IESR to get 15% off of your purchase and help them on their mission to support mental health research. Seal the Deal Wax Seals, custom wax seals by Cecilia B. Check her out on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax seals. And our newest sponsor, Raw Nutrition Supplements. Go to getrawnutrition.com. Use promo code IESR there as well. You can get 10% off of your purchase. They've got a whole bunch of stuff on there. Anything, whatever you're looking for your health routine, they've got it. So do go check them out. Of course, follow the group here. All of us here first, of course, at BP Bulletin _IESR for the group, but also at Rickinator555 for Ricky, at the AZTRL for Alden, and at Let's Wine _IESR for me. And if you like the show or any of the shows here on IE Sports Radio, do be sure to check out our supporter pages as well. Well, guys, I think we should talk some baseball, given that it's the Bullpen Bulletin. I don't know about you, but we had our I guess you could call it opening day. It's the first game of the baseball season, so it's officially kicked off now with the Los Angeles Dodgers facing off against the Chicago Cubs in Japan. The Dodgers came out victorious 4-1. Ricky, let's start with you. What were your thoughts on this game? Well, first of all, did you wake up to watch it?
No, I did not. I
Fair
looked at the
enough.
score. I think at like 8:00, I looked at the score. It was 4-1 in the eighth, and I'm like, yeah, I could live with that. Close game, I would have been like, yeah, I'll run to watch Jason Benetti and AJ Brzezinski on Fox. But other than that, I was like, yeah.
Gotcha. So, Alden, did you wake up for it? I know, what was it, 3:30 your time when it kicked off, or when the first pitch was?
Yeah, out here in Phoenix, I think it was like 3:10 in the morning, when it started or somewhere along those lines. I actually could have stayed up to watch the beginning of it. I stayed up until 2 a.m. last night, but to be honest, this game is going on during spring training, and it actually went past my mind a little bit. And like Terrence said, let's talk some regular season, I guess. Baseball, our March Madness brackets will be messed up after the first round anyway, but for this game specifically, um, a little bit about it. I mean, it kind of went as some people would predict it. Yamamoto had a pretty solid outing. Uh, Imanaga, he did walk 4 batters, but he had less than 70 pitches. And, I do understand that, it is going on during spring training. So a lot of the pitchers may not be, obviously these two pitchers who started probably weren't going to go farther than, 4 or 5-ish innings a little bit. But, as soon as the Cubs took out Imanaga, it was literally just a nail in the coffin for the Dodgers. The Cubs bullpen gave up 3 runs in the fifth, and that was pretty much all she wrote from there. So we got another game coming up soon regarding these two teams. But overall, I mean, regular season or whatever this game was, I'm just happy that regular season baseball is back, I guess. I mean, we are still in spring training, so I guess it's not fully back yet, but it was nice to see two fully healthy, capable starting players play for a regular season series.
Our head of the station, Larry B, diehard LA fan, was up at 3:30 a.m. lifting and watching the game. So that's some commitment for you. Alden, what stood out to you in this game? Alden talked about the pitching a little bit with the pitch counts. What stood out to you in this one?
I think it was the Dodgers bullpen. They did upgrade that a lot in the offseason, and that it really stood out for them in the past season as well. So for them to go out there, add guys like Tanner Scott, who I believe closed that game too. Yamamoto, he only gave up 1 run in the second inning, and then as soon as they took him out, and just goes to show that the Dodgers have a reliable. I know it's only one game, but from what I saw, from what I've been reading and looking at from the game, uh, they do have a pretty reliable bullpen as long as they can stay healthy. If they could stay healthy, then I think that's what really stood out for the Dodgers in this game. And meanwhile, on the other side, the Cubs bullpen I believe it was Ben Brown who gave up the 3 runs in the fifth. One guy, as soon as they took Imanaga out too. So, it is just one game in the regular season. We're going to see another one here pretty soon. But I think the bullpen for the Dodgers really, in the first game, sent a message that they're going to be pretty reliable this season.
Awesome. Ricky, what stood out to you in this one? Did you have any major takeaways looking at the performance from both these teams?
I mean, you look at the Dodgers, and remember, no Mookie Betts. He skipped this trip due to an illness. They want to make sure that he's on track for when the games start in the States. Freddie Freeman was scratched from the lineup due to injury, so hope he's okay. So considering no Betts, no Freeman, you're still seeing what Tommy Edman can do. You're still seeing what Teoscar Hernandez can do. Michael Conforto was batting 7th in this lineup. He gets a hit. And they still have Andy Pajes, who drew 2 walks. So a very well-rounded lineup despite only 7 hits, 2 of them being from Ohtani. But they were able to get the job done. And I think the contrast Yamamoto from this time last year to this year, we've seen a huge evolution because Yamamoto in Korea last year looked terrible, albeit it was his first ever start. But now you have a year later back in Asia and Japan, and he looked like a guy composed for the moment. 3 hits allowed, no hits for the Cubs after the 3rd inning. He looked in command of his splitter. It was nasty stuff. So we've seen a guy that can now, I don't know if he's the guy you can trust still in a big spot, but he's handled big games well. Go back to game 5 against the Padres last year in the DS. Go back to the World Series against the Yankees in game 2 where he looked really good. So he is starting to live up to the big moment. Now we'll see in about 6 hours, well, about 9 hours or so, what Roki Sasaki could do on this stage, because I think that's going to be the player everybody wants to see. Because if he's anything like he's supposed to be, this rotation doesn't really need that much else. I mean, they've got Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, all those things. It's a well-rounded team. And I think on the Cubs side, look, they're going to get hits, but you're seeing when you're relying on Matt Shaw to play third base, Pete Crow Armstrong in center. They've got youth. It's great. You're going to struggle with that youth sometimes. And you kind of saw that in this game, going 1 for 7 with men in scoring position. You're playing the Dodgers. You got to hit with men in scoring position. You can't make mistakes. And an error on a double play in the 5th inning kind of led to one of those mistakes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Cubs, they had a couple good moments offensively there, but overall, the Dodgers pitching just straight shut them down. And I think, you have to take some of these with results with a grain of salt, given that both of these teams have traveled all the way to Japan. You're dealing with, potential jet lag, time zone differences. You can only expect so much out of either team. I'm not surprised they weren't mashing home runs or, having these outrageous performances. But, the Dodgers, we talked about them in our divisional preview. We expected them to be good. They've come out game 1 looking pretty darn good from a pitching perspective. And the Cubs, I think, again, it's one game in Japan. I'm not going to start sounding the alarm on anything Cubs related, just based off of this one game. Now, if we get 10 games into the season and we start seeing the same things, well, then we'll throw up the red flags. But for now, I think we talked about it kind of before the show. This is 1 of 162. We got a long way to go. Who knows what's happening in the rest of the way, really, for both of these teams. But now back to spring training, because baseball makes sense, and we've got regular season started, sort of, and spring training going on. So let's hit our spring training check-ins really quick. Ricky, what are you seeing? What are you watching here as we do get, for the other 28 teams, opening day is not super far away. I believe next Thursday/Friday for the rest of the league. So what are you seeing as we get to this final few spring training games?
Well, it's a good time, especially because now you're seeing the regulars start to play 5-6 innings. You're starting to get a little bit of taste of stuff. I'll point out a matchup from earlier today. The Red Sox are playing the Yankees. It was Walker Buehler against Max Fried, and both looked pretty good. Fried went 4 1/3, 2 hits, struck out 3, was working on his changeup, did some good stuff there, just 68 pitches. On the other side, Walker Buehler, 5 innings, 1 earned run, 3 hits. He struck out 4. Really was done in by some defense in the 4th inning, led to a couple of runs. But that's a good preview if you're looking for Red Sox, Yankees, and Buehler stuff look sharp. So I think that's something to really, if you're a Red Sox fan, you're happy about that, especially with Crochet pitching the opener. I just kind of like seeing opening day starters get announced. That's really cool. And I know next week we're going to do our favorite opening day matchup once everybody has starters, because I think I like to see the must-see matchups and when you get that MLB TV package and you go around the league. So looking when you get this kind of matchup in the spring, you don't get it very often. So I was impressed watching both Buehler and Fried today. They had some good stuff.
Yeah, and it's great for Walker Buehler, too. We know he's dealt with some serious injury issues over the past couple of seasons. So for him to come out in spring training to be looking good, not only has to be great for him to finally feel like he's getting over that bug, but great for the Red Sox for taking that what most people would consider a risk by taking a shot on Buehler, to maybe get that reward there. Alden, what are you looking at? What are you seeing here in spring training?
Yeah, so I'll go for a little doubleheader that happened a couple days ago. The Padres had a doubleheader against the Angels and the Diamondbacks, and Luis Arias continues to shine so far. He's hitting 14 for 32 so far in spring training. Dylan Cease had a very good outing when they beat the Angels, and then they lost to the Diamondbacks. And then after that, the Diamondbacks got annihilated by the Angels. Merrill Kelly had a rough outing, and his overall ERA in spring training is close to the, I believe, 5 or 6 mark. So Merrill Kelly's kind of having a struggle in spring training. And, we talk about opening day pitchers. Corey Lavello still has not come out and named an opening day pitcher for the Diamondbacks yet. But there was a report that he may make his decision tomorrow. So we may find out more about whether Burns or Gallen will get the opening nod for next Thursday when they play the Cubs, who we just talked about. So that's who the Diamondbacks start off their season against. But overall, I do have a White Sox pitcher I want to bring up, but we'll talk about that a bit more when we get to the AL Central a little bit, who's looked pretty good in spring training. But other than that, yeah, the Padres, even though they lost some players, they gained some players as well, and in spring training, it's definitely showing. So, we keep talking about the NL West. It's really about who gets second place in that division. But overall, these other teams that I continue to look at, it's the bullpen as well. For the Diamondbacks bullpen especially, Justin Martinez, a guy who's supposed to be closing for us this season, has an ERA of 4.50. So it is only spring training, and a lot of that ERA, a big reason was because of one bad outing. So not a lot to overreact about, but the more I watch spring training, the bullpens, they have their off days, and occasionally they'll have their good days. But overall, yeah, like I said, I know West I've been looking at a lot more, and it's definitely going to be competitive.
Yeah, that's a great point. This is the point in spring training to me where I start to look at who's starting to gather some momentum, who's starting to put it all together. I think, kind of in the beginning of spring training, you see guys, they're kind of experimenting with different things, pitchers, maybe there's a new pitch or they're working on different things with their mechanics, warming up, and, hitters kind of, they're trying to get their bats going. So I think we're at the stage in spring training where, maybe in the early stages, if a player's struggling, okay, no big deal. But now, I start to pay attention to who's starting to get hot, who's starting to get that momentum, that flow going as you get into the season. One guy who I've been paying attention to, I've noticed is starting to kind of get hot. Ryan Mountcastle of the Orioles has 5 home runs in his last 8 spring training games, hit 2 today. So that's something that Orioles fans in particular are excited about, especially now that they've moved the left field wall back in from where they moved it back to and his right-handed power. He's actually the player who's been impacted the most since the Orioles moved the left field wall back at Camden Yards. He's lost the most home runs due to that move of any player on the team. So really excited to see his power going. And then like Ricky mentioned, the team starting to announce the opening day starters. That's always exciting. That makes it feel real. That makes it feel like, okay, everybody's planning now, everybody's getting ready, they're getting ready to go. I know the Orioles announced their starter was Zach Eflin with Grayson Rodriguez down, and also the Nats announced Mackenzie Gore is going to be the opening day starter for them, so that's always great to see. We are going to take a quick break, everybody. When we come back, we are jumping into our divisional preview with the AL Central. So do not go away. You are listening to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, New York? This is Ricky K coming at you at the NY State of Sports, a new show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Listen to me every Thursday afternoon as we bring you the latest takes on the Yankees, Mets, Jets, Giants, Knicks, Nets, Rangers, Devils, and Islanders. Plus, you get some college hoops and what's the local sports events going on in the area. It's a state that never sleeps, so why not get the opinions and sports takes that never sleep? Again, every Thursday, 2 p.m. to the NY State of Sports. We'll see you then.
Hello, IE Sports Radio family and other sports families. My name is Alden K, and I want to welcome you to the AZ Sports Zone on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you're a fan of the Valley and the Grand Canyon State like me, then I've got the show for you. Tune in every week, where I will update you and give you the latest news for the Arizona Cardinals, Phoenix Suns, Arizona Diamondbacks, ASU Sun Devils, U of A Wildcats, GCU Antelope, and of course, the NAU Lumberjacks. Again, if you're a Valley sports fan and like all that is desert sports like me, tune in every week here on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll see you then.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We are jumping into our division preview now. We've got the AL Central on the docket this evening, a division that actually, looking at all of the teams could be quite competitive. I'm not saying that there's dominant favorites here, but there are some pretty good squads in the division. Unfortunately, we're probably not starting with the greatest of those squads. We're going to kick it off with Alden talking about, clearly, obviously, the best team in all of baseball. I think we can all uniformly agree with that one, guys. But no, we're going to talk Chicago White Sox. Shout out to our Chicago host, Adam Karnick, who's currently hosting the Neutral Zone, also currently going on right now. But Alden, take it away with the White Sox. How ridiculously high are the expectations for this team this season?
It's about as high as my odds of still having a chance to go to the majors. I mean, the White Sox could give me a tryout at this point. But it's like I'll try not to bully the White Sox too much or anything like that. But it's just this team gives me like a look because I've been looking at them in spring training. There are some of their prospects on a positive note that I will say do look really good, but obviously they won't start the season with the White Sox. They'll be in the minors for a little bit, and Colson Montgomery being one of them. Despite having a pretty good spring training, if White Sox fans want a positive note, he is looking like a major leaguer right now, but obviously not starting the season with the White Sox, which is kind of questioning for me. I mean, you still have Amaya, but he was dealing with a shoulder injury during spring training. So it's like, okay, is he going to be fully healthy to start the season? How do you address the depth in that situation? And overall, the pitcher I wanted to name out earlier was Shane Smith, a guy who in spring training, a game specifically when they played the Dodgers, he struck out Ohtani, Freeman. He held Betts to 0 hits at one point. So he was a guy in spring training for the White Sox pitching that is looking decent in spring training. Another guy that will not be with the Sox to start off the season. So it's like you guys won 40 games last year. You're projected to win, I believe it was like 50 or something like that. And their fans are hopeful to get there. It's not like, okay, yeah, we're definitely going to get at least 50 wins. Yeah, we hope we get there. We hope we get over 50 wins. and not under the 50 mark and have another historically terrible season again. It's like at this point, the White Sox, honestly, I feel bad for their fans. It's like at this point, you might as well just head up north side of Chicago and be a Cubs fan at this point. But other than that, until they get new ownership, which is looking like it's trending in that direction, one of the Ishbia brothers, Justin Ishbia, who his brother currently owns the Phoenix Suns, so take it from me, if he were to become the Sox owner, then they would spend more money. They would try to actually improve the team. So if you're a White Sox fan, that's honestly your best bet at this point. Just hoping that Inishbia takes over your team, because, I mean, it feels like Jerry Reinsdorf only cares about how much money he puts in his pocket rather than actually trying to win at this point. But overall, this White Sox team is, I really do hate to say it, they're just the laughing stock at this point of the MLB. But I think, everybody, even Adam Karnick, would probably agree this is probably the bottom dwellers of the AL Central, and it's just a mess for them right now.
Yeah, no, it's a bad sign when you look at the roster and most of the names you recognize because they've been on other teams in the league prior and they just kind of landed in Chicago. Dre Area Sports jumping in. Good evening, sir. Taryn, funny here. Dodgers still have a chance of going 162-0. Yes, mathematically that is correct, sir. They still have a chance. It's not going to happen, but it's always fun to think. And of course, Larry has to throw in his shot at his Raiders, which he does traditionally. Um, I would even go so far as to say the White Sox are, if we're going to football equivalent, the White Sox are the 2017-2018 Cleveland Browns, the team that went 0-16 or 1-15 and then 0-16 in back-to-back seasons. That's my equivalent. But like you said, we'll try not to dish on them too hard. Hopefully they can improve. That's all we can really hope for there. Jumping over to a team that I think is actually quite good and has a pretty good shot at the division this year. Ricky, you are covering the Cleveland Guardians. Shout out to Jen B, the host of the Show of the Land, which is our Cleveland show here. But Ricky, take it away. What are your thoughts on the Guardians?
You look at a Guardian team that, of course, made to the ALCS last year. And I think even though it was a 5-game series against the Yankees, they played some really close games, especially in Cleveland. You look at this team. This team is the strength for Stephen Vogt's club is their bullpen. When you've got the best closer in the game in Emmanuel Clase, but it's not even just him. You've got Cade Smith. You got Hunter Gaddis. Tim Herron was really good at times, the left-hander. They added Paul Sewald into the mix this offseason. Eunice, who was used to pitch in the Central, they added later in the offseason. So the bullpen's going to be their strength. You look at the starting pitching. Shane Bieber, of course, hopefully will be back at some point this season from Tommy John surgery. John Means as well, so they'll add those reinforcements later in the year. But Tanner Bybee emerged last year as a really good pitcher. You've got Tristan McKenzie. Gavin Williams is a guy just about 26 years old. We'll see if he takes the next step. And the only question with Cleveland's going to be their offense. Look, they traded away Andres Jimenez. We'll see what Gabriel Arias can do. We saw Rocchio kind of shine in the postseason last year, but they're top of the order. When you get Kwan, Jose Ramirez, we'll see what Kyle Manzardo can do getting regular playing time now with David Fry being hurt. And they bring back Carlos Santana, a nice reunion. Guy's almost 39 years old, but he's back in Cleveland, a really reliable first baseman. This is one of the surprises of the league last year. I don't think they're going to be surprising anybody this year. And they just seem to always find ways to win. It's just a matter of, can they score enough runs? Their pitching is going to do just enough. But how do they reinforce this team? They usually find young pitching anywhere, and it works. But the key for them is going to be offense this year. If they get enough, they'll be fine. If not, that's where their downfall could be.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of an interesting way they're kind of tweaking the roster here, with trading away Jimenez, trading away Josh Naylor, I believe, to Arizona, if I recall correctly, Alden. So, moving some pieces in place of some of this younger talent. I think the Jimenez move might have even been a little bit more of a precursor to the eventual call-up of Travis Bazana when he finally gets the nod. So, but yeah, no, I like Cleveland a lot. I voluntarily took on the Minnesota Twins, and in looking at this roster, you look at this roster top to bottom, and you've got each position has some decent players. They have some solid starters. Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, a good young arm in Simeon Woods Richardson. They've got some nice starting pitching, some good relievers, Griffin Jacks, Johan Duran, and some good players in the field. I'm curious to see how Brooks Lee, who's a former high draft pick for them, how he adjusts for his first full season in the majors. But my thing about the Twins, whether you're looking at the starting pitching or the relief pitching, the hitting, the power, it's all just decent. No one component of this team really screams, "Oh man, this is like they don't have the bullpen of Cleveland. They don't have the starting pitching of the Royals. They don't have Detroit's bullpen, also very good and starting pitching. They don't have the offensive capabilities of some of the other teams around the league. Everything just screams decent. And when everything is decent and you don't have that one thing that you can lean on to win games, you're kind of relying on all of the parts working together night in and night out. And over a 162 game season, that's really hard to do. I equate it to kind of like, when I do my the Let's Wine About DMV Sports, talking about the Wizards, not saying that they're as bad as the Wizards, because the Wizards are really bad, but the Wizards I always describe as a group of like B minus C plus guys, like guys that they're good, they're okay, but they're not like nobody on that team is putting up 30 points a night. So you look at Minnesota, none of their starters are aces, none of their relievers are going to have like a 1.5 ERA. None of their hitters are going to smash like 40 home runs or, have a 375 on base percentage. It's all just decent. And that's just one of the things that teams like that just do not really like make the playoffs at the end of the day. Like they need some part of this team needs to grow and get really better, and maybe it's Simeon Woods Richardson becoming the ace of the squad and pitching well, or some of their young guys like Brooks Lee or Royce Lewis taking that next step offensively, or Byron Buxton finally finding his bat after God knows how long he's been in the majors, or Carlos Correa at shortstop. Maybe he can return to form and provide some good offensive output. Just something on this team needs to pop. And right now, I just can't see, at least on paper, what that component of the team is going to be. So now we get to our roundtable segment where we take the last two teams of the division, and we, talk about them as a group. So Ricky, let's kick it off with you, and I'll let you choose if you want to start with Detroit or Kansas City. We'll throw the floor to you, but go ahead, pick one of these guys, and just give us your overview, your thoughts here.
Well, I'm going to go with the Royals, and another AL Central team that went up against the Yankees last year in the playoffs. But again, we talked about competitive series. It was a 4-game series, but hit here or there by Kansas City would have made all the difference. And you talk about this rotation, when you got Cole Reagans in the mix, you got Seth Lugo. It's very quietly a very solid 1-2. And one of my favorite moves of this offseason is a rare 1-for-1 trade where you give up Brady Singer, who unfortunately didn't really have that much of a role with the team anymore, and you go get Jonathan India, who could probably benefit from a change of scenery. Kansas City lacked having a leadoff man in front of Bobby Witt Jr. Now they've got one. I think it's going to be a huge benefit to them. I thought Urseg last year did a really good job out of the bullpen. Now he gets a full year to be the closer there. The Royals are going to find their way to pitch. You still got Sal Perez there. You still have a guy like Hunter Renfroe, but their strengths, their pitching. We'll see what Bubic can do. Waka's a solid vet. They added Carlos Estevez to kind of help that bullpen along. To me, what I'm looking forward to seeing is, can Cole Reagans take that next step? He did against, sadly, Mike, your Orioles in the postseason last year. But this is a guy, I think they've got the best ceiling out of all these teams. And I think while they made small moves, those small moves can help what is an evolving roster of young talent.
Yes, I believe Cole Reagans was the one that gave Corbin Burns his 8 innings pitched, 1 run loss in the postseason. That's just a rough way to do it. Alden, what are your thoughts on Kansas City? How do you think they're going to do this year?
Yeah, looking at this team, they're coming off a really good year, and for me, it just depends on how their offense shows up. And not to rub even more salt into the wound, but their pitching is what got them to the DS against the Yankees. Their pitching held the Orioles to, I believe it was 0 runs, and not just game 2, but also game 1. And the Royals still in the elimination game only had 1 run. That's all it took. But if you're going to get past these other AL teams, if you're going to actually make a run, you got to score more than that. And that's why they got Jonathan India, a guy who can lead off, a guy who's currently batting over 300 in spring training currently. So that's what I like to see from Kansas City, is just their offense showing up. You still got, like Ricky said, Perez is behind the plate, and Renfroe, and of course Bobby Witt, who's we all know is going to lead the way. But overall, Kansas City, I kind of looked at their offseason a little bit, and I found some transactions that they did try to make, but they missed out on certain guys like Starling Marte. They missed out on Profar, I believe it was, who ended up going to Atlanta. But despite all of that, I don't think they really needed any of them. We all know their pitchers are going to show up unless if Reagans can benefit like that, on the point that Ricky brought up earlier. But along with Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha, Chris Bubic, the pitching is going to show up. It's just the offense that I think needs to do a bit more, because I think that the Royals, they'll get back to the playoffs. But when it comes to being a playoff team, you can't score 1 or 2 runs against teams like the Yankees or the Orioles or the Red Sox, assuming they build off of the offseason that they had. If they take on those teams, their batters are going to have to show up. So that's what I'm looking at regarding the Royals.
Yeah, for sure. No, all great points, Alden. Yeah, I look at this team and I think, they've got to start pulling offense from more sources other than just Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez. Then it's a young lineup. You look at, pretty much all the other guys other than Salvi and Renfroe are in their mid-20s. So, young guys, up and coming guys. You hope that, kind of as, when, these young guys get that more playing time, they transition in the positive direction and they start to produce more offensively. But the pitching's going to carry this team, at least for a large majority of the regular season. And hopefully that gives the bats the opportunity to heat up so that they can properly complement each other come to playoffs. This is a really good team. And like they've definitely got a shot at challenging this year, but I mean there's some strong competition, I think, in this division, and I think one of those names you got to throw Detroit into that discussion here as well. Ricky, what are your thoughts on those Tigers?
Well, to mention that the Royals were a team that was kind of known for the moves they didn't make, I would argue that with the Tigers. I mean, we looked at Detroit as a team that could have been in the mix for Alex Bregman. That never happened. And really look at their offseason on paper. They made 2 big moves, one on the offensive side, one on the pitching side. Pitching side, they brought back Jack Flaherty, who, of course, they traded away not knowing they were going to make this Cinderella run of the postseason last year. And on offense, they got in Gleyber Torres, who's probably going to hit toward the middle portion of their order. He's not going to give you much defense. He's not going to give you much base running. And he's going to be perplexing at times. But he's going to provide some production, I think, for Detroit in that lineup. What's the evolution of Riley Green? What's the evolution of Kerry Carpenter? Can Spencer Torkelson give him anything? You trust them because they've got A.J. Hinch, and A.J. Hinch is one of the managers that can get the most out of the least with this group. Like, what does Trey Sweeney do going forward? And I think with the bullpen, like, we know Scooble's good in the rotation, but the bullpen-wise, you got Foley, who did good last year. Bo Brisky was got do-it-all kind of guy. They added Tommy Kahnle. This is a team I'm interested to see what they do with this offense. Remember, Parker Meadows and Matt Reeling are both hurt right now. And I think the wild card with them is when does Jackson Jobe come out? He's one of their top prospects. If he can provide something to help this group, I think it's going to be interesting. Now the Tigers are kind of the hunted. How do they handle that?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point for sure. They last year they kind of snuck up on everybody, got hot down the stretch, and kind of like the point we made with Cleveland, with them, kind of surprising everybody with their competitive last year. I think Detroit surprised people at the end. I don't think there's going to be as much of a surprise this time around. Alden, what do you think of those Tigers out there in Detroit?
Yeah, so while Detroit they didn't make a move this offseason that's like mind blowing or anything like that. I still think they had a fairly decent offseason, and to be honest, I think they kind of dodged a bullet not getting Alex Bregman with the money that Boston is giving him, despite the opt outs. I think in some ways Detroit dodged a bullet on that. But bringing back Jack Flaherty, I mean, yeah, that's a good addition to the rotation after Skubal had a Cy Young season. Uh, and just what I always say about teams that are up and coming is you're going to win. And I said this about I believe it was the Nationals in a previous episode. They have a proven manager, and I think that when you're trying to become a contender, and I'm going to keep on saying this, having a proven manager is something that's really good to start off with. Hinch is a guy. No matter who the players are, he'll go out there, find a way to build a team and give it their all. And that's what Detroit did last season. So now it's all about building off of that. This Tigers team, they play in a competitive division. After the season they had last year, they're going to have some type of expectations this year. So can they build off of that? That's what it's about. But the additions to the bullpen, I believe they also, along with the players that Ricky named, they also brought back Andrew Chafin. So that's another guy that I'm kind of willing to see a little bit if he can improve the Tigers bullpen. But other than that, despite the moves that they didn't make, I still think that some people are really counting out this Detroit team. I don't think they're a one-year wonder. I think that they're capable of getting back to where they were. It just depends on if they can exceed those expectations. But I do think that the Bregman signing that they missed out on, I think a lot of people look at that a little too much. Just with the money that Boston gave him, I don't think that Detroit really missed out on too much. But overall, I do like this Tigers team, and I think that they're due for another good season.
I think so as well, Alden. And Ricky mentioned two names that I am focused on for this Detroit team. One is Jackson Jobe, like you brought up, Ricky. Is this his time? You look at this rotation, and obviously you've got Skubal at the top. Flaherty probably slots in as your number two with Reese Olson as your third guy. That's not a terrible 1, 2, 3. But I think if Jobe can come in and really round out. And it's a good situation for him because it's low pressure, because he doesn't have to come in and be the top pitcher right off the bat. He can be the fourth or the fifth pitcher in the rotation and hopefully give them some good innings on the back end. That'll be key. But also Spencer Torkelson for me. He's got to be the guy. You look at this lineup, and one thing that it lacks that the other two, I would say the two other main competitors being Kansas City and Cleveland in this division, is that guy. Who is that guy? Like for Kansas City, obviously it's Bobby Witt. We know that. For Cleveland, it's been Jose Ramirez for forever, and it probably will be continue to be Jose Ramirez. But who is the guy who, when everybody else is struggling to hit, will come up and just, rip the cover off the ball and, help get this team back on track? Is it a Riley Green? It could be, but, Spencer Torkelson I think it was the number one overall pick. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong there. In the draft, you drafted this guy for his bat, for his ability to be the main piece in the lineup, and it hasn't happened so far. Can he get over whatever's been preventing him from taking that step and be that guy in the lineup? Because if he can finally figure it out and become that batter that Detroit drafted him to be, then this Detroit team can not only make the playoffs, but probably be a good challenger to some of these other top teams in the American League. So now, of course, as has become the tradition, we have to give our predictions on how this division will finish out. Now, if you guys want to start at 4, I'm okay with that. Go 4-1. I'm good there. But if you want to give the courtesy of including your number 5 team, go right ahead. But Alden, we'll start with you. How do you think this division's going to finish up?
I'll just say it for all of us, so you two don't have to say it. Number 5, White Sox. That's it. Number 5, White Sox. Number 4, I'm gonna put the Twins there. I don't really think that Minnesota really improved in any way this offseason, and it's just that season that they had last year after going back to the postseason and winning a series. It's like, how do you not, try to get back to that point? To me, the Twins didn't show a lot of effort this offseason. They made a couple re-signs and extensions, but other than that, it's like, where is the effort showing and going into this season? So I'll put the Twins at 4. Number 3, I'm gonna put the Tigers there. I do think that the Tigers will have that kind of season again. I think that they will have another great year after going back to the playoffs. They did bring in Gleyber Torres, who may not be the best at fielding or anything like that, but he is a veteran who can guide the younger players if needed, and of course the young guys and the proven manager, like I brought up earlier. I think that the Tigers will have an above 500 season and they'll be at the 3rd spot again. I'm going to put the Guardians at 2 for now. We'll see what their team is, like past the trade deadline or how they start off the season. But I'm going to put Cleveland at 2. Just the players that they did trade away, Jimenez and Josh Naylor. For me, it just depends on the prospects that take over their spot on how they play and how they really shape the team as well. But that is a reason why they got rid of them, because they had prospects that were lined up to take those spots as well. And they also had to worry about paying those players as well. So if anything, they did get rid of them for that purpose. And with Cleveland, after the season they had last year, I think that they'll finish 2nd. And then I got the Royals at number 1. I have the Royals winning the division. I think that their pitching will have another good season again, with Reagan's taking a big step up. And obviously with their hitting, I'm not one to judge teams during spring training, but their batters have looked a lot better in spring training so far. They have uh, I think it was like 6 capable starters that will make their opening day roster with a batting average of 280 and above. So, spring training, that while they get the rust off of their hands, this and that, they are looking good. And, as we get closer to opening day, it's showing some pretty good momentum for the Royals batting as well. But like I said, for me, it's all about the Royals offense. And I think that with the struggles that they had in the postseason with offense, they definitely focused on that a lot, trying to improve that a little bit. And with their pitching coming off of a good season, I'm going to pick the Royals to win the AL Central for this year.
That's a great lineup. That's a great lineup for sure. Ricky, what do you got? I think Alden's right. Let's put the White Sox at 5. Let's start at 4. How are you looking 4-1 here?
Well, we'll just do something fun with the White Sox. Their over-under on FanDuel is 54.5. So instead of picking the White Sox 5th, we could just go, you're going to think they're over-under 54. I think
okay,
close,
Alden, real quick, what do you think? Over-under 54 on the White Sox?
Under.
All right. Okay. All right, Ricky, give your over-under and then go for 4-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go under 2 on the White Sox. I think it's like 50-51, which I can't see getting to 55 wins unless some young guys start performing. 4, I'll go Minnesota as well. Just not enough offense there, I think. And they really struggled at the end of last year. Hopefully Royce Lewis, though, stays healthy, because that's a guy I like watching play. 3, I'm going to go with Detroit as well. I think you look at the Tigers, I just want to – can those young guys back it up? And can that model of only having 2 good to great starters, because they've been bullpenning a lot of these games, like does Casey Mize do some things, Kenta Maeda, but you've got a guy like Kiefer Montero is going to be a guy I want to see progress a little bit more as well. 2, I'm going to go Kansas City. I think you look at the Royals, I think I just want to see a little more from them. I think it's not that I don't think they can do it. I want to see some consistency in back-to-back years. And number one's the team that we've seen do it the last couple of years. That's Cleveland. They've always seemed to find a way. They trade people away, and we don't know why. But there's always somebody in the system that comes up and make an impact. Like Brian Rocchio, I think is going to have a big impact. They got Big Christmas, Jackenzie Noel. Maybe he now, the full season, starts doing some things off the bench or plays a little bit more in the lineup. And Stephen Vogt's a really good manager. I think he learned a lot of things last year, new to the postseason stage. And I just can't pick against them when that bullpen is so good. And they just need to get a little bit more innings from the rotation. Maybe they add a starter. Maybe Bieber comes in the second half and starts showing some good things again. But I just trust Cleveland's bullpen as the best unit of anything in this division. And to me, that puts them over the top.
Yeah, no, that's a great ranking. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to put some faith in the White Sox. I'm actually going to pick the money line. I think they get exactly 54 wins. I think that's a spot on number. I'm going to put some faith out there. Now, keep in mind, I do think that ends up still being the worst in the league by a good solid like 6 or 7 games. So I think they'll still be at the bottom. But I think I'm going to do something different. I'm going to take the money line there. At 4, I'm with you guys, Minnesota. Like I discussed, there's nothing about this team that excites me. There's nothing about this team that makes me think, oh, they can jump over the top of any of these top 3 teams here. I was debating this ranking, kind of going back and forth, but I think I'm gonna follow. I'm gonna follow Ricky's ranking here. I think Detroit at 3. Their bullpen is solid, but I think somehow it's still 3rd amongst these top 3, which just says more about how good I think these other 2 bullpens are in Kansas City and Cleveland. I think offensively, I have some serious concerns here, and they're already dealing with some injuries that we mentioned. And then the starting rotation, last year it was basically after the deadline, or even before the deadline, really, because when Flaherty was with Detroit, he was okay. He wasn't amazing. It wasn't as good as he finished the season. So it was basically Skubal and everybody else, and I don't know if they did enough just with the addition of Flaherty to change that. So I think Detroit at 3 there. I'm not saying that they get a black mark for missing out on Bregman, but missing out on a major offensive piece in general, I think you have to give them a little bit of a knock. Number 2, Kansas City. I'll agree with that. I love the starting rotation there, and they have some good pieces offensively. I just don't see. I need to see more out of that group. And then number 1, Cleveland. We have to remember Cleveland got bit a little bit as well last year by the injury bug to their starting pitchers. You got to think kind of like how we gave Atlanta a little bit of the benefit of the doubt in the National League East. Like, okay, that's probably not going to happen to them again there. But the bullpen is absurdly good. The offense has some really intriguing young pieces that I think if just some of these guys can put it together, along with the established pieces they have in Steven Kwan, in Jose Ramirez, in Carlos Santana, which you know exactly about what he's going to get you at this point, and Lane Thomas. We have to remember when he came over at the trade deadline, he was a massive addition to this team and a big piece to them down the stretch. He returns as well. So I'm going to go with Ricky there. Cleveland, Kansas City, Detroit, Minnesota, and the White Sox. Money line. Well, that'll do it for our divisional wrap-up. We're going to take one last quick break. When we come back, we have to check into our college teams and, of course, give one quick look around the diamond. So do not go away. You're listening to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Cleveland and Columbus sports fans, I've got the show for you. I'm Jen B, host of the Show of the Land right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. You want football? I've got the Browns, the Buckeyes, the Eagles, the Purple Raiders, and more for you. You want basketball? I've got the Cavs and the Charge for you. You want hockey? I've got the Blue Jackets and the Monsters for you. You want football, aka soccer? I've got the Crew and the Crunch for you. You want volleyball? I'm going to unleash the fury for you. You want more Cleveland and Columbus sports? I've got them all for you, from the majors to the minors to the college rinks. Catch me, Jen B, every week on the Show of the Land right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sport.
What's going on, Kansas City sports fans? I am the greatest of all time, the best in the world, but more importantly, the owner of the world, Brandon the Franchise Buck, and I am your host for the show. This is KC Sports, which you can find right here every Monday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Now, are you looking for a show that you can watch live or listen to later on that talks about the Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Royals, Sporting KC, KC Current, as well as even the Kansas City Mavericks? Or do you want to listen to a show that talks about your high school sports, whether it be on the Missouri side or the Kansas City side? Let's even talk about college. Let's talk about KU. Let's talk about K-State. Let's talk about Mizzou. And let's talk about your boys' alma mater, the Pittsburgh State Gorillas. All in all, it doesn't matter. If it's Kansas City anything, we will talk about it on this show every Monday at 2 p.m. We'll talk about stuff that's happening in your area, let alone Union Station, Power and Light, T-Mobile Center. It doesn't matter. If you want to talk about it, join our segment, the Fan Interaction segment, every Monday at 2 p.m. and make sure you get your voice heard. Until then, I hope you check out the show. As always, I am the greatest of all time, the best in the world, but more importantly, the owner of the world, Brandon the Franchise Buck, and I am your host every Monday at 2 p.m. on This is KC Sports, which you can find right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We are into the final part of our show, which of course means we have to check in on our college teams here. And we're going to start with our college baseball check-ins. Alden, we're going to jump in with you. Who is catching your eye in the college baseball world this week?
Yeah, so I'm going to take it over to Wake Forest, who is currently ranked 11th right now in baseball. A team who went undefeated this week. They went 4-0. And I kind of wanted to talk about an upcoming series that they have. They're taking on Clemson here pretty soon. So I wanted to throw that out as an interesting series to watch. They did sweep Miami in their most recent series, and one of them was in extra innings too, which was a big showdown. But they won 5-4, and then it was a big batting battle in the final game, and they won 12-10. So the pitching is a little bit inconsistent for Wake Forest so far, but I really do like this Clemson series that's coming up. This will be a really big test for Wake Forest as they continue to climb the rankings up a little bit. Obviously, with Clemson being ranked 7th, currently going 19-2, and another team that almost went undefeated last week as well. So, pretty good test for Wake Forest. I do like the way that their bats look so far. Their pitching, like I said, kind of inconsistent there, but then again, the rest of the season, they've had games where they've shut out a lot of their opponents too. So, but Wake Forest versus Clemson is the series for me to watch for this upcoming week.
Awesome. Good. Shout out to those Demon Deacons playing some good baseball right now. Ricky, who do you have in college baseball this week?
Well, before we get to that, a couple of interesting scores from tonight's action. Tennessee finally took a loss to East Tennessee State in 10 innings, so no more undefeated baseball teams. And Florida State getting upset by Mercer tonight. So some good performances from some mid-major schools to begin this March Madness mid-major phase. But we're going to take a look at a team that's usually good in basketball. Well, if Kansas gets eliminated this week, you can get used to the baseball team. So they were playing Minnesota on Wednesday at Minnesota, little Big 12, Big 10 action. And Kansas won 29-1 in that game. They hit 5 consecutive home runs, the 4th time that's happened in Division 1A history. Chase Diggins, Max Solis Jr., Brady Council, Brady Bollinger, and Jackson Gage. And this is not a fluke for Kansas. I mean, they're not ranked, but they're 17-3 on the season. Haig is having a good season, hitting .313, 11 homers, 32 RBI, a .788 slugging percentage. They've got an interesting series this week against Arizona. So that should be a fun Big 12 matchup out in the desert. So Jayhawks fans, if you're a little bit upset with the basketball team or your basketball team gets a short week in Providence this week, check out the baseball team over this spring, because maybe Kansas could do some good things.
Yeah, awesome. Shout out to those Jayhawks. Yeah, they got a big matchup against Arkansas in the first round of the NCAA tournament. But yeah, baseball team sounded like they're doing pretty good too. Looks like you got something to be excited about after basketball season is over. For me, I am jumping over to the team that unfortunately you just announced lost to a mid-major school. But hey, I'm still going to go for them anyways. It was only their second loss of the year, so I'm okay with that. And that would be Florida State Seminoles, my alma mater. I got to give them a shout out. Jamie Arnold just continues to pitch out of his mind. Has an .87 ERA with a .58 whip. Stuff that sounds like a straight out of a freaking game, like MLB The Show or something. But also another pitcher, another lefty pitcher, Wes Mendez, putting up pretty similar numbers in 5 starts. He has a .66 ERA and a .7 whip. So not just Arnold getting it done for the Seminoles, they also have Mendez and then starting pitcher Joey Vellini also putting up really good numbers. So 3 starters putting up sensational performances so far for the Seminoles. Also, a handful of offensive players to note. Drew Farreau is batting .352 and is tied for the team lead with 7 home runs. Max Williams also has 7 home runs. Alex Lodis has a .456 batting average through 19. Well, I guess it would be 20 games now. I don't have the updated numbers from tonight. But a .456 batting average and a 1.278 OPS. So, series of really good offensive performances. Batting .346 as a team, really good there. So Seminoles, I know there was a small setback tonight against Mercer. It happens, but this team is still performing well, and they're still looking like one of the better teams in college baseball this year. Flipping over to the women's side, we have our college softball check-ins now. And Alden, who do you have in softball this week?
Yeah, so I'm going to stay local for softball and talk about U of A, a team that reached the top 10 in rankings. So, Wildcat fans, you have a great softball team this season. But I wanted to talk about the upcoming games that they have. So they're taking on 2 Arizona college teams here for their next 4 games. They have a 1 game against GCU, so that should be a good one as well. And then, of course, they take on ASU in a 3-game series. So I always have to bring up that just ASU and U of A rivalry at its finest. And I guess while I'm in the Arizona softball, with U of A being in the top 10, having an identical record, or not too identical, but ASU also having 20 plus wins this season. I'm surprised that they're not ranked, but they have a big test taking on U of A here soon. So just wanted to shout out the good old rivalry for U of A and ASU, and of course the GCU game, another team that isn't ranked or anything like that, not too outstanding, but definitely competitive whenever they play. But overall softball, U of A continues to look pretty good. They I believe they swept Utah, and pitching they shut out Utah in 2 of those games as well. So the pitching continues to be the beneficial factor for U of A so far, and even the bats too. They averaged around 6.5 runs a game in that series as well. So this is a complete U of A softball team right now, and fortunately for me, no other Arizona college team can lift a candle to the Wildcats, sadly. But overall, they're having a good season, and they just keep climbing those ranks. So credit to them.
Yeah, credit to them, especially, we've talked about it over the last few shows, but any non-SEC team that manages to climb the ranks in college softball, you got to be doing pretty well because that conference is loaded with talented teams. Ricky, who are you looking at? Who do you want to highlight this week in softball?
So another interesting thing, Oklahoma's still undefeated. Texas played Florida this week. That was a fun match, but Gainesville, Texas took 2 out of 3. It's weird you could have 2 losses and be number 2 in the country. It's usually the other way around. A couple big series in the SEC this week. Obviously, LSU against Georgia. You've got Alabama taking on, actually Texas Tech taking on South Carolina, Florida State taking on Duke, Alabama taking on Texas A&M. So I have good rank versus rank. But we're going to go to the mid-major spot for this one. There's a really, really good pitcher to talk about. That's Maya Johnson from Belmont. She's a redshirt junior. She had I think she is right now the best pitcher in college softball. She, this past week, and she was the D1 softball player of the week, 50 strikeouts in 3 starts against Murray State and Drake. She had 16, 17, and 16. So very dominant strikeout numbers from Maya Johnson. This season, she's got 168 strikeouts and only 5 walks in over 87 innings. That's a .77 ERA. So today she's facing Murray State. She gets a no-hitter. 6 innings, 12 strikeouts in a shortened game. That's her 4th no-hitter this year. And she's had 8 shutouts. Like, she's been that good. The only reason that she didn't have a perfect game, the leadoff batter got on in an error. So she was absolutely dominant. She's got over 500 strikeouts in her career. I was making the comment off air before we started that some major conference should throw some NIL money her way and get her into a big thing. Maybe that's a pitcher though you see in a regional if Belmont can win the Ohio Valley and maybe make some flashes. So shout out to Maya Johnson and the Belmont Lady Bruins. She is dominant right now.
I imagine she might have had some joking words for that fielder that had the error to start off that game for sure. But yeah, absolutely dominant performance by her. You're right. Somebody throw some NIL money at her. Bring her on to one of these big SEC schools. I am going over to Nebraska this week for softball, a team that has started to climb the rankings a little bit, had some early season losses, but really starting to put it all together. And specifically, I want to highlight Jordy Ball, I'm guessing on that last name spelling, Bahl, who for Nebraska happens to be their leading hitter, as a 500 average, 11 home runs, a 1,000 slugging, and a 1.6 OPS. So absurd numbers hitting, but also happens to be their leading pitcher is 11-3 with a 1.81 ERA, 10 complete games, 108 strikeouts, and 85 innings pitched. Does give up a couple of home runs there. She has given up quite a few of those, but hey, other than her, the Nebraska's pitching has been good, not great. The offense has been good as a whole. They're batting .354 as a team, so she's helping there. But yeah, Jordy Ball for Nebraska almost seems like single-handedly carrying this team to that 20-8 record that they have. And we'll see if she can keep up that performance as we get closer to postseason tournament play in the college ranks for baseball and softball. Now is the time, our last segment of the show, we are going to finish up with our Around the Diamond, where we just talk about, whatever is maybe something weighing heavy on our hearts, maybe something that's really got us thinking. So Alden, we are going to start with you here. What is we'll call it your hot take. or hot topic for the week here?
Yeah, I'm actually going to start off with your Orioles. And
Uh-oh.
you might know a little bit more about this than me, but I saw earlier today they demoted Kobe Mayo to AAA, and he had some words about that. He
Mhm.
basically said that he thought he proved everything he needed to, and then the Orioles manager responded to that in a way and said, "That's what happens when you have good teams. You keep your best players. Unfortunately, you have to send some down below because you have a highly talented roster." And we saw that with other teams as well, like the Dodgers. They had to send two good players, Bobby Miller and Ha-Seong Kim, to AAA just because they spent too much money and they have so much talent on their team right now. But overall, for that Baltimore situation, like I said, you might know more about it than me, but I kind of found that interesting a little bit. He has spent a, a good, fairly majority of time these past 2 years in the AAA Norfolk. So, uh, I can understand the frustration a little bit, especially with the spring training that he had. But I kind of do agree with the manager on this situation. That's just how it is when you have highly talented teams and you're winning the division and you're competing in the playoffs year in and year out, this and that. But overall, for the rest of this spring training, we have, I believe, 9 days left until opening day, and this is when I'm going to take time to look at the bullpen, not just for my team but other teams as well. Even though the D-backs bullpen is kind of questionable as of right now, other than certain guys, but the Diamondbacks do have a little bit of a closing issue to worry about right now, and of course, uh, definitely we'll be looking at the news tomorrow to see the announcement on our opening day pitcher. But by the looks of it, the fans want Corbin Burns. Torey Lovullo might go Zach Gallen. That's what it's looking like. But we'll see how it is. But overall, I wanted to bring up that Orioles topic regarding Kobe Mayo because, the frustration kind of, I don't want to say stirred up drama or anything like that, but it definitely kind of makes people scratch their heads a little bit.
Yeah, I was hoping to keep Mayo in my back pocket until the Let's Wine show later in the week, but yeah, I mean, the point is, I could go on and on about some of the signing decisions the Orioles made this past offseason, but it's a good problem to have when you have so many talented players that you have to fit into the roster, that a guy like Mayo, who has been in AAA for a little while and has raked in his time in AAA. I think he's got it's some of like 35 or 40 AAA home runs in that span too. So he's produced, but it was always going to come down to a numbers game offensively, and that's why I was wondering, were they going to trade a Ryan Mountcastle or a Heston Kjerstad or, some of these other guys, or Ramon Urias, in the offseason to get some pitching help, which they still freaking need, in order to make room for a guy like Mayo? That didn't happen, and here we are. It's the byproduct of the situation. But anyways, not too much rambling on that. Ricky, what is your Around the Diamond topic for us?
So we're gonna take a trip down to Miami, and of course the Marlins are not exactly in the good graces of Major League Baseball. They're people still wondering why the heck they don't sign anybody, and I'm sure the baseball looked at that. But there's one other thing that baseball had to nix over the course of the last couple of days. So we all know in the NFL they have practice squads. Guys that don't make the roster, and they try to maybe still have a chance to eventually make the roster. So there was an ad on LinkedIn where the Marlins were offering non-professional players to compete against their low A affiliate, the Jupiter Hammerheads. No, that will not be one of the affiliates we ask on what minor league affiliate is this game show that we're going to play in April on this podcast. But they have the opportunity to play against Jupiter for $150 a day. Major League Baseball went right in and said, nope, you can't do it. Because remember, the MLB PA also represents minor leaguers now, and that's why minor leaguers get a much better pay than they ever did. Last year, the players in low A had to make at least $26,000, a little over $26,000. Even rookie ball, I think you get a minimum of about a little bit under $20,000. So why can't you get the complex guys to play the low A guys if you really wanted that? I don't get the gimmick, but the Marlins are apparently all about gimmicks. That's ridiculous that you got to have a practice squad for these kind of things. But that's what Miami is right now. We talk about the White Sox as a laughing stock. The Marlins are not that far behind, and it's sad because they can produce good pitching, but you do kind of stuff like this. Like, this is stuff that, like, I would understand if, like, a semi-pro team did something like this. That's semi-pro stuff that the Marlins, and the fact that I'm reading an article that a Marlins official told the Athletic the ad wasn't fully looked at. Like, that's incompetence right there. That person that looked it over and thought that was good should get fired. So I don't understand what the Marlins are doing.
Yeah. There was a once upon a time that the Marlins were good. Alden, you're a little bit younger than us, so you might not remember it. It might have been before your time. But, there was a once upon a time where this was a good franchise, a competent franchise. And I feel like ever since the ownership group that involved Derek Jeter, I don't think he's part of the ownership group anymore, but when that ownership group took over, man, this franchise just nosedived into the tank, and they've been there ever since. I can't think of a recent time where they were a competent team, really. I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember it in recent years. But my Around the Diamond, a really interesting story broke this week involving Joey Gallo. Now, Joey Gallo, name known amongst many baseball circles. He's been around the league. He's been with the Yankees, the Rangers, most recently with the Nationals and the White Sox. He actually got cut by the White Sox this past week, which is really saying something, that you're getting cut by the White Sox. But he made an interesting announcement that he said he's giving up hitting to switch over to pitching full time, and he's going to try to resurrect his MLB career doing that. Now, I do think his arm is equipped for that, because I can remember many a throws he made from the outfield where he just rocketed that thing long distances. So he's got a strong arm. We know that now. Yeah, I didn't look into his history to see if, maybe he was a two-way player in college. He did both pitching and or high school. He did both pitching and hitting. So I don't know if he has experience with those mechanics, or if he was one of those emergency position player pitchers that teams have these days that they use in the cases of blowouts. But really interesting move there by Gallo. First of all, to be honest enough with yourself and recognize, look, if I'm getting cut from the White Sox, if the Nationals are dumping me for absolutely nothing, maybe this whole hitting thing has passed me by. Maybe it's just not my cup of tea anymore. Not that he was ever the greatest hitter, but I mean, he could pop some good home runs. He had some great power. He was just never had a great batting average. But kudos to him for realizing that he indeed was struggling in that department, and for him to try to make that change at this stage in career. It's not an easy change to do in general, but props to him for realizing that and making that decision. That is going to do it for tonight's show. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to Taryn, Larry, Dre Area Sports. Ralph Francione jumped in a little later, saying, "What's up? Sox are my opener tomorrow in Beantown." That's great. Check him out on Beantown Sports, covering all things Boston sports. Ralph Kalish jumped in there right at the end. Good evening. Fantasy draft picked Mookie Betts and Paul Skeens. I agree with the Paul Skeens pick. That's probably a great pick for fantasy baseball, for sure. And we had, right at the last second here, Marcus Losgray jumped in, the host of our Gloves Off Boxing podcast. Good evening, sir. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Go to planetjerky.net to get some today. It's a great snack for baseball, by the way, so definitely check them out. Vital Apparel, use IESR code to get 15% off your purchase today, and continue to support them on their journey to support mental health research. Seal the Deal Wax Seals. Go to @SealTheDeal_Wax Seals on Instagram to check them out. Custom wax stamps, perfect for your special occasion. And our newest sponsor, Raw Nutrition Supplements. Go to GetRawNutrition.com. Use promo code IESR to get 10% off of your order. If you have not done so already, please follow IE Sports Radio on all social media, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Go to the website, IESportsRadio.com. There you'll find our show pages, our merchandise, our blog, our Hall of Fame, and so much more. Definitely check out the website. And again, if you like our show or any other show, please view our Supporters Club. Lots of fun perks, just $5 a month. Jump on there and support us today. And reminder to follow us on X @BP Bulletin _IESR for the show. And then you can find us individually. You got @RickandNader555 for Ricky, @TheAZTRL for Alden, and @Let'sWine _IESR for yours truly. We'll be back next week to talk more baseball as we rapidly approach opening day for the majority of the league. We are down to 2 divisions left in our division preview, so it'll either be the National League Central or the American League West. Tune in to find out which one we're doing next week. Once again, this has been Mike Patt, Alden K, and Ricky K for the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.